On to that next story here at home. One of the suspects arrested back in April in connection to the death of a teenage girl in Evansville pleaded guilty on multiple counts this morning. 21-year-old Alyssa Ahrens pleaded guilty to child sexual exploitation and manufacturing or delivering methamphetamine. Now, as part of the deal, counts of second-degree sexual assault of a child, 2 counts of possession of child pornography and possession of methamphetamine were dismissed against Ahrens. Another suspect, 27-year-old Hunter Drifall, pleaded guilty earlier this week to 2 of the counts he faced. The charges all stem from the death of 14-year-old Florencia Henthorn, who died from a gunshot wound on April 6th of last year. Ahrens' sentencing has been scheduled for April 2nd. She faces up to 40 years in prison and a $100,000 fine.